My name is Evelyn Lederman. I live in Austin, Texas. I've been writing a little over 10 years. I'm a retired insurance executive, but more important, I'm Elise and John Calderello's younger sister. And, Elise will be happy to embarrass me and say, hi, Jackie, and say that she used to change my diaper. And that she got all excited and had me take a selfie and my my Medicare card. And this is the first time she'll hear it. I officially became eligible for Social Security, 100% benefits in May. So in June, I got my first check. I didn't tell her that. So I thought I better grab it while it's still there. Okay, so who am I? Like I said, I'm Elise's, although sometimes you'll hear me call her Lisi. So again, going back from Elise or Lisi. I'm either Evelyn or Ev or Evie. And again, I've been writing a little over 10 years, but I'm the least likely person to have ever written a book, let alone about 50 books. And the reason is, when I was a kid, I did not like to read. And my dad, much to Elise's surprise, I told her this morning, he had to pay me to read. And in high school, I suffered through the books I was forced to read. And it wasn't until I was 27 when I read my first romance novel that I enjoyed reading. And so when I went on vacation for 7 days, I would take 7 books with me and I would read a book a day. And every blue moon, I would get so into a book, I'd be up all night. And close your ears, I would call in sick because I was never sick. So because I had to keep reading. But, one of the things you want to do as an author is keep the page turning so that if the kids have to eat cereal for dinner, you're doing it right. So basically that's what changed, is the fact that I discovered the genre that I love, which is romance. And I started as a historical romance reader, moved on to paranormal, and just, it was my way of escaping a stressful job. And what really got me into the romance novel community, next slide, please, is I went to romance novel conventions. And I don't know if some of these people cross genres, Heather Graham, Gina Showalter, S.E. Smith, and Sherilyn Kenyon. And I've met so many authors over the years. I went to romance novel conventions for 5 years before I retired as a reader. And Elise asked me, when I retired, are you going to write a book? And I'm like, no, I'm not going to write any books. Well, in my first romance novel convention, an author called Christine Feehan, who writes paranormal romance, I got an intimate conversation with her, and she was talking about how her characters talk to her. And that was a common theme that weekend. And I thought, my God, these people are psychotic. When I was my voices started happening to me on February 23rd of 2014. And people go, you know the exact date? And I'm like, yeah, because I was driving to play tennis. And I remembered a conversation that occurred outside of Sedona, Arizona, between my sister Elise and Al Osprey, one of my friends. And they were talking about string theory and intimate parallel dimensions. I thought, my God, these people are crazy. But that conversation that occurred maybe 3 or 4 years before that played in my mind. And all of a sudden, these 5 girls started talking to me. Okay, I'm psychotic. But the next day I flew to Los Angeles, California, where I visited friends before going down to Laredo, Mexico. Elise and John were there with me. And I would hike up the mountain with John every morning. And then on the way down, the voices would continue. And then when I got to the pool, I pulled out my spiral notebook and I wrote and I wrote and I wrote based on what those words. So in August of that year, I wrote my first book, Chameleon Soulmate. So I started it in February. It's a parallel dimension of telepathic beings. So it's a romantic fantasy. And she gets basically pulled through a portal in Sedona, Arizona. And it's like the Wizard of Oz. You know, it's black and white. They're pulled into Oz or wherever the lollipop people hang out. And I wanted her to know that she was not in Sedona, Arizona anymore. And sometimes the pollen was so thick in Austin, the sky would appear yellow. Well, I did not want a yellow sky. So I thought, okay, I'm going to create a purple sky. Well, I unintentionally branded myself purple. So when I go to conferences, I wear purple. With the exception of this cover, all my covers are purple. And in my first, 4 series, I found a way to incorporate the color purple into my worlds. So I branded myself that color. And the second book basically took me 3 months from the time I started to the time I was published, because she never shut up. I had to take Ambien to sleep at night. So I mean, it went really fast. And it was like, oh my God. But again, that's what it's a wonderful community. And my 6th time at this conference was my first time as an author, and Elise and John came with me. And it was lovely because I had a horde of people at my table during the signing. But one of the things that Elise said, that she was surprised at how giving and supportive all the authors were to each other. Because we are not in competition with each other. I attended a conference and a presentation at Book Club. This was probably about 6 years ago. These were their statistics 6 years ago. An average man, now we're talking about average, none of you are average. An average man reads a book a month. An average woman reads 3 books a month. The average romance reader, 3 books a week. So when it comes, and again, these are just averages. So when it comes to whether or not we're competitive with each other, there's plenty of room for all of us to prosper. And one of the authors I met at one point, how many have ever heard the name Julia Quinn? Raise your hand. Okay, how many of you have heard of the Netflix series of Bridgerton? Raise your hand. Those were Julia Quinn's books. And by the time Bridgerton came out, she had finished that series, but I had read every single one of those books. But after my first romance novel conference, because she was one of the reasons why I wanted to go, was to meet Julia Quinn. And we're sitting on the floor at the Denver airport chatting with each other after the conference. And so it's just so warm. So, next slide, please. So what inspired me? I write paranormal romance, science fiction romance, fantasy romance, and young adult science fiction and fantasy. Who is this guy? Barnabas. Barnabas Collins. And what was Barnabas Collins? He was a vampire. There have been a lot of adaptations of Dracula, but the one that got me was Frank Langella's Dracula. I mean, that guy can bite my neck any time. And probably the first vampire book I read, which was not a romance, was Interview with a Vampire, Anne Rice's Interview with a Vampire. And so I, from a genre standpoint, I was hooked. Who are these guys? Spock and Captain Kirk. And it premiered in '67, so I was probably 9 years old. My dad was so excited because he read a article about Gene Roddenberry. So I actually sat through the first season and the second season, and I think it was on for 3 years, first run watching Star Trek. And so that got me into my love of science fiction. The movie that probably most influenced my life was Star Wars. Lisi was The Wizard of Oz. And from a book standpoint, whenever I'm talking to an author about world building, and again, this is not a romance novel, but it has romantic elements. It's Frank Herbert's Dune. When you want to understand or how somebody does great world building, that is a book you have to read. It's just incredible. Another great book for world building, it's a young adult, if you can call it sci-fi, is Divergent. And I mean, it was a good movie, but from a world building standpoint, from a society standpoint, Divergent, Victoria Roth did an outstanding job of creating those 5 different worlds, or not the worlds, but those 5 different segments. Unbelievably great work. So again, what do I write? I write paranormal romance, sci-fi romance, fantasy romance, YA sci-fi. Next slide, please. So that was basically my journey. So how many people how many people out there want to write a book or publish a book? Ever had that idea? Again, it's something I've never wanted to do, but so there are various ways to get published. The first one is a traditional, like Simon Schuster, Penguin, Avon, where basically you try to sell an idea of a book to them and they will pay you. There's the vanity press, where you pay the publisher to publish the book. And they will provide you an editor, they will provide you a cover, but you pay them. And you'll make basically a fraction of what you would make if you do the last thing, is go indie, where basically you publish your own books. And then the last but not least is hybrid. You've got some traditional authors that they're both indie published and they're traditionally published. Sometimes one of their series goes out of print, they go back and they republish it from an indie standpoint. So your story. A short story is 1,000 to 10,000 words long. And most of that is journals, but you can also do it in an anthology. Those are short books. I've never heard this expression before. From my standpoint, I'm like, what's a novella? But a novella is basically 17.5 to 40,000 words. And I've probably written about 20 novellas. Short stories, I've probably only wrote about 3. And then a novel goes from 40 to 50,000 as a starting point, and it varies by genre. So you're like, okay, a typical adult fiction book it's considered a fiction book at 50,000 words or above. Sci-fi is normally 90 to 120,000 words, historical 80 to 120, mystery 70 to 110. Romance, now romance goes down to 40. So 40 to 100,000. Young adult 45 to 80,000. Middle grade 20,000 to 60,000. So it takes me about an hour to write 1,000 words. But then you've got to edit it and re-edit it and re-edit it. So it is a time. time-consuming project. When I wrote this book, this was young adult science fiction. Aliens invade, they come for our children, and it's written through the eyes of a 14-year-old girl who was selected by the aliens. By the time I was close to the end of the book, one day I wrote 12,000 words. The second day I wrote 8,000 words. The next time after that, I wrote another 8,000 words. I just couldn't stop writing. That does not happen. It's also one of my favorite books. And it was first runner-up for best book of the YA book of the year from In Detail magazine. But just in case you want to know from a nonfiction standpoint, a standard nonfiction book is 70 to 80,000 words. Self-help, 20 to 70,000. Memoirs, 60 to 90,000. Technical or academy books, roughly around 70,000. Biographies, 80,000 to 200,000 words. So next slide, please. So what's required? Of course, these are my books on the sides. So what's required to publish? Well, first of all, you have to have a manuscript. Are you a plotter? Which means before you start writing, you plot out every aspect of that book. I took one class with Sherry Adar for 2 days. She does note cards, and she's got cork boards all over the place and everything. I got headache just trying to figure out, oh my God. There's also the pantster. Basically, you're writing by the seat of the pants, by the seat of your pants, which is basically what I am. And there's basically a spectrum in between. Sometimes I start with no idea where I'm going to go. Other times I have plot points. When I started this book, I started with the idea of abductions. They basically blow 3 cities off the face of the earth, basically threatening them. And they were low population. Baker, Alaska was one of them, and it's no longer called Baker, Alaska. It's got an indigenous name now, which I can't remember. But, and I lost my train of thought. But when I started it, I had no idea why they were taken, where they were going, how they were going to get from point A to point B. I just, by the seat of my pants. And so how are you going to do it? The second business is you're going to write first person or third person. For the life of me, I have problems reading first person. If I really like the book, I don't even notice it's first person. From my genre standpoint, urban fantasy and young adult is generally first person. The rest of the stuff is generally third person. And close your ears, Elise. My younger sister once wrote a novel, and it was first person present tense. It was really difficult for me to read because I never ever, normally when it's first person past tense, which is much easier to read if you're used to reading third person anyway. But that was very odd, but that was a decision on her part, how she was going to write that. And then what tool are you going to use to write your manuscript? Most people will probably think maybe Word. Well, Word is one long, funky document, unless you're going to write a lot of Word documents. I use a tool called Scrivener. It was primarily started as a screenwriting tool where you can basically subdivide subchapters. So I'll write a chapter, I'll have, depending on 2 or 3 subchapters, and I can pull it up by the subchapter. Using that software, I can also have a clerk next to me, whether the point of view, whose eyes am I looking it through? So that, because it's so easy when you're writing to all of a sudden change your point of view. And I know authors do that all the time, but generally you do it in a subchapter. Every now and then you read somebody who will do it within a paragraph, like, oh my God, But there's also an area within the tool to go ahead and outline who your characters are. So as you're writing, like, what color were his eyes again? Oh, or what color was the person's hair? Now you can change the eye color if it's part of your plot, which I've done in the past with a character who was a shifter who couldn't shift because she was only part shifter. Well, once she made it with her soulmate, all of a sudden she could, and her eyes changed colors. But again, that was not a mistake. That was something I planned to do. And so you'll have to decide, what are you comfortable writing? Third person, first person, or maybe you can do both. When I started my young adult book, again, they're normally first person. I couldn't do it. I kept lapsing into third person. So I'm like, forget it. I'm going to write third person, and it's through the 14-year-old's eyes. I've got one urban fantasy series. Again, I wrote it third person. That's just me. Again, what do you think would be a mistake that most authors make the first time they're writing a book? The biggest mistake a first-time author does is they provide too much backstory up front. Think about the Wizard of Oz. You know, Dorothy is riding her bicycle and she's got little Toto, and this nasty, not really a witch, but she turns out to be a witch, is going after her. Well, imagine if they basically put the theme of Wicked before the Wizard of Oz. You don't need all that information from Wicked to understand Dorothy's story. So he basically starts with that small little time in Kansas, but what, 98% of that book takes place in the way to Oz or in Oz. So that's one of the mistakes we all made. When I first started my first book, The Chameleon Soulmate, I blew it up after visiting with some authors at a conference because there was too much backstory. I finally sent it to an editor, and Elise asked me, I got an 8-page critique back. And when Elise asked me, well, are you going to take her advice? And I'm like, yeah, I'm paying her for my advice. So that's the second thing you've got to do, is you've got to have an edit. And there are 3 kinds of edits. There's the developmental edit. That's basically, is there too much backstory? Are you basically dragging on and losing the attention of your reader? Is there enough conflict? That my editor is crazy with conflict. So I basically had to add an antagonist, and that basically added a lot of words to my story and a subplot, but I blew up the first 7 chapters because it was backstory that was really not required for the book. So when you actually read this book, it's nothing like what it originally was. And it went through 3 edits. The same editor, it doesn't necessarily have to be the same editor. An edit, generally a 50,000 word story cost me about $500 to have edited. You can, there's a whole spectrum of edits. And she does all the edits for me, and I basically do my own copy edit. There's so many tools now, you can run across it. I always listen to it. Word gets more and more. When I go to Scrivener, I convert it to Word, and I call it then blue line edits, because Word will let me know everywhere that grammatically there are issues. And of course, it'll add or subtract commas, which is always my downfall. When in doubt, leave it out. So that's basically, so the developmental edit is basically about the story. What works, what doesn't work, where are you inconsistent in your storytelling? And it always helps to use the same editor in the same series, because my editor will remember things that I've forgotten, and she'll call me on it. I'm like, oh, I forgot about that. The second one is line edit. That's where you're dealing with your grammar and the commas and all that sort of fun stuff. And then the copy edit is when it's ready to be printed or ready to be uploaded. The copyright is basically, you can go through different vendors or copyright.gov, the US Copyright Office. Very easy to use. It basically costs $65 to copyright a book. If you're uploading to Amazon, Amazon will not upload it unless you own the copyright. Draft to digital, that will send it anywhere your little heart desires, will not take it unless it's copywritten. So spend the $65 and get it copywritten, and you get a nice little certificate for it. The cover. I'm a believer that if you can't do something right, have somebody else do it. So I have a cover artist who I've been using from the very beginning. Because the first cover artist I had was a flake. And yeah, she was. And I described what I wanted. I was actually going to Austin for my mom's memorial service. And I was at the Fort Myers airport. I filled out a questionnaire. By the time I got to Dallas, I had this, she had this Shutterstock photo. But everything else she did was a graphic artist did. This cover I did through an author software, BookRush, because I just wanted to have a quick, dirty cover because I was at two conferences this summer, and it had been a couple of years since I had a young adult book, that I just put this one together really fast, which is why this one is yellow instead of. So you're probably wondering, why does she have a yellow book up there when everything else is purple? That's why. It was just quick and dirty. But the cover is probably the most important thing that will sell your book. The second thing is the blurb in the back. Reviews don't hurt. It's amazing. I can get 50 reviews, but it's just number of stars. Because when you buy something from Amazon, you get an email, how many stars, and then you're given the option to provide a written review. Please provide a written review because that helps sell your book. I once got a 1-star review on a novella I wrote in the Worlds of S.E. Smith. And the complaint was there was too much sex. Best 1-star review you're ever going to get. Because that book was the #1 Kindle World book across all genres for 3 days. Because there was that 1-star review said too much sex. And as an author, you also learn from the verbiage, or you got pat on the back. Or one day, I was in somewhere in Florida, and I was meeting another author for lunch. I got a 5-star review, which could have got me into heaven for sainthood, and then I got a 2-star review that I just wanted to slit my wrists. I worked for Farmers Insurance for 33 years. I never took anything I did personally. That 2-star review just hurt to the core. So she kind of talked me off the ledge. But, fortunately, I don't get a lot of reviews, but the average reviews I get, I'm sitting at 4.5 stars on a 5-point scale. Do have some that are lower, but the vast majority are basically 4.4 to 4.6. And I've got a couple that are 5 because they haven't been reviewed by a lot of people. But the cover is so important. Now, this cover, if you look like that, this cover was done by, the whole thing was done by a graphic artist. She basically provides the front, the back, and the spine. And all I have to do is provide how many pages, and she'll know the spine. This book, she did the cover for the ebook. But Amazon, through using their online service, I filled out a template, provided me the back, put my little photo in there. I was able to just put some information about who I am. But all I did was that the ebook cover I did, and Amazon took care of the rest. God bless them. What's popular more and more now are they called special editions. This is a special edition of my first book. And Fiona did a new cover, same author. This is the paperback version. Again, she just gave me the ebook cover. I work on the Amazon website to create the back and the spine, which, you know, helps save money. But this one was a special edition. A lot of authors go through China to do their special editions. I wanted a US printer. Guess where this printer is located? Ohio. This one is called, it's got gold inlet. It's got printed edges. So when you go to Barnes and Noble, you may see some of these special editions. This basically costs twice as much as had I not done the gold, or I could have been silver, and the painted edges. But this was the 10-year anniversary of my first book. And so this was my indulgence. And I basically help financiers go through. Have you had anyone heard of Kickstarter? This was a Kickstarter successful project. So if you want to support an author to do XYZ, you can go to Kickstarter. My first Kickstarter did not fund, this one funded. Most authors now use Kickstarter for two main reasons, either to do something like this, or what I'm doing right now, I'm writing a book, I'm on book 2 of 4, is I will have a project out in October, November, basically a 45-day project, that if you support the project, you're going to get all 4 books and a short story all in November. Boom, the ebook. If you wait for Amazon, it'll go out in November, January, March, and April. Because some readers now do not read a book in a series until the whole series is completed. You know, you got to thank Netflix for that, because you basically sit down and you watch the whole series. I'm not going to watch Wednesday season 2 until the second part premieres, so that I can sit down and over a couple of days period, watch the whole kit and caboodle. So you could basically pay a little more through Kickstarter and get everything at one time, or you can just wait until April to get the whole thing on Amazon or whatever. So that's the cover. I said, remember the second most important part is the blurb. I don't have a problem writing a 50,000 word book. Writing a 200 word blurb is really difficult for me. So I will basically give it a try, and then I send it to my editor, who actually likes writing blurbs, and she'll complete the blurb for me. Because again, it's like an elevator pitch. You've got basically 8 to 10 sentences to sell your book to somebody. Not an easy thing to do. So, what do I need to format a book? For a paperback or a hardback, you need a PDF. For Amazon, you need an Amazon EPUB. And for everybody else, you need an EPUB. And then you upload to different sites depending on how you do that. Of course, Amazon has to be different. It used to be called a Mobi. Now it's called an EPUB. But so how do you format a book? When I started with the Chameleon Soulmate, again, some people formatted their own books. Not my thing. I don't have the patience for that. So I actually paid Amazon to write the blurb and to format the book. And then I worked with my graphic artist and I said, hey, do you have an associate who will format books? So she actually formatted this book, and she used the font that's used on the cover to format the book. But that costs money. So what they have now is they have a tool called Vellum. Less vellum's hard. Using a Mac, I can format my own books, and all it costs is the cost of the software. And I think now it's around $300 to have unlimited ebooks and also do the PDF. And so that's one of the advantages of having a Mac is Vellum is only for a Mac, although there's a workaround for people that don't have Macs, but not a problem. Next page, please. Okay, so where are you going to publish? And what are you going to publish? From a sales standpoint, not units sold, but money sales. Number one sales, paperbacks constitute 32.9%. Basically, people under 30, they like holding books. They're back to, if they're on their phone, the odds are they're playing games. About 65% of them like to buy books. Would have been nice if once Borders was around, that maybe that would have saved Borders in those days. But they would love going to Books A Million or Barnes and Noble, or just buy it through Amazon. Amazon's wonderful. If you want to buy a particular book and pre-order it, you will get it on the mail on release date. And that's how I used to buy my books, especially when Borders was gone, because based on the author, it may not be at Barnes and Noble on release day. So that was always a beauty, that on release day, that book is back from Amazon. Hardbacks consist of 33.3% of your sales. There are some books, and I do buy hardbacks from time to time, because when a particular author I like has a new book out, it's only available in hardback. I may have to wait 6 months to a year to get the paperback. And I'm one of those folks that still likes reading a paperback. I do have a Kindle. I don't like reading ebooks because I just go through it too quickly and I don't really savor the book. But if I want to read something by Lady Singh or I've got to buy the hardback or wait a year or 6 months. And I'm not a patient person. I want that book and I want it now. Audiobooks consist of 15.2% of sales, and ebooks are 14.2%. Now you're like, well, I thought ebooks kind of rule the roost. Well, an average ebook is $2.99 to $7.99. On Amazon, if it's under $2.99, you only get 30% of your sales for an ebook. It's $2.99 or above, you're at a 70% price point. So guess what? All my books at least start at $2.99. A paperback will run anywhere from $10 on average to $19. So when you look at the dollar difference, the ebooks really go up there. And there are a lot of ebooks out there that are either free or at 99 cents for the first of the series. So those authors want to grab you so that you read the rest of the series. Amazon is a king. Amazon, from an ebook standpoint, constitutes 72% of the US market. So I know some authors that don't like being on Amazon. Well, you're cutting your own throat. There are more and more very popular authors who sell their books through their own website. The only problem with that is if you write a lot of ebooks, there's a group on Amazon that basically pay a monthly prescription. It's called Kindle Unlimited or Kindle Select, whatever it's called, where you pay a monthly fee and you can have, I think, up to 10 or 20 books in your e-reader. And it doesn't cost you anything other than that monthly subscription. Thank you. Problem with Kindle Unlimited from an author standpoint is if you are on Kindle Unlimited, you cannot be on any other platform. So if you've got a reader who reads under a Nook or an ebook, any other ebook platform, you can't have that book anywhere else except Kindle Unlimited. You can't even sell it on your own website. Okay. You've got some authors that focus just on paperbacks. On paperbacks and hardbacks. I know one author who, let's say for this book, this is the original cover. This is the special edition cover. That's the 10-year edition cover paperback, and this is the hardback. She's got probably 5 different covers for all her books. She employs 8 people. She has a warehouse, and all she does is sell paperbacks, and she makes probably well over 7 figures a year just on paperbacks and hardbacks. But that is a very selling it on her own, labor intensive, but she pays for all of that. Not me. Although they do know me at the post office, there's always one woman I wait for to thank goodness for media mail, because it's a fraction of normal mail. But again, Amazon is king. You see up there, Drafted Digital, they are arbitrators. They basically will send your book. They'll even send it to Amazon, although I upload to Amazon myself. But if I'm wide, I upload to Amazon and I upload to digital, it'll send it to 20 different places, including Overdrive, which is the library. It will go to the Nook, Barnes and Noble. It'll go to Kobo. It'll go to Google Play. And it'll go to places you've never heard of before. So you basically upload it once to go to all of those places and you get one 1099. So I basically just deal with 2 1099s, one from Amazon and one from Drafted Digital. And it's just easy enough to, I just delisted some books because I just put it on Kindle Unlimited. I just click on Drafted Digital, but maybe in 6 months I want to put it back on Going Wide. It's just a click. And then I just click off of Kindle Unlimited. That's a 90-day obligation, which you can renew every 90 days. But that's basically the ebook market. So next page. So marketing. You've got was daughter or niece who wants to. The biggest marketing is social media. If you want to sell a book, you've got to be on Facebook. I also have a newsletter that goes out. I've got about 7,500 subscribers. And I usually get about 15 to 20% that open it up, but you never know whether it's 15 to 20% are the same folks. And also depending on the device they use to pull up my newsletter, there may not be a cookie or whatever it is that, so it's probably higher than that. So if they pick it up on their Apple phone, it may not convert over to my vendor that sends out my, you've heard of MailChimp? I use something similar to MailChimp. MailChimp just became too much, it's too expensive. There's a vendor that basically coordinates swaps between authors. So if I've got an author that writes paranormal romance and I want to pick up some of her readers, we'll swap newsletters. So I'll offer her book and she'll offer my book. And it's just a nice way to grow your own newsletter as well as readership. Also group promos. I'm in a group promo right now for Kindle Unlimited because a large percentage of people that read on Kindle Unlimited, that's all the only place they're going to read. They're not going to buy anything else, but they're going to read on Kindle Unlimited. But you want to get into that market, and so swapping with other people who are in Kindle Unlimited is another way to grow your business. Conferences and book signings, that's where it all began. That's where I've gotten a lot of support over the years from other authors. And swag. Every time you open a jar with what's in front of you, you are going to think of me. And maybe, I know I've got one person out there who likes paranormal and sci-fi romance. when she opens that pickle jar, she's like, I wonder if that woman's got anything out now. And she'll go check it out. And today through tomorrow, I've got a free book on Amazon. It's a vampire first in series. There are 4 in the series. It's called Blood Entwined. And next, oh, no, go back up. I guess I didn't put it down there. Oh, advertising. 2 big advertisers, Amazon and Facebook. On Amazon, when you pull up, let's say you want to read something by James Patterson, and you pull up James Patterson and you see authors that are not James Patterson, that's because those authors are paying for that space. It's called a sponsored ad, and it even says sponsored ad if you look at it. Or if that dial below, there are all sorts of books that are not the book you were looking for. Those are basically the authors paying for it. And I usually spend about $3 a day on Amazon to get in front of different people, and I choose, what to look at. If it's a sci-fi romance, I'm not going to go for the paranormal romance person or the historical romance. I want to focus on that, who somebody's looking for a sci-fi romance. Okay, next. Oh. And of course, Facebook ads. So any questions? Yes.
So I wrote down too, I was wondering, you were talking about fonts earlier. So do your books, do you change your font depending on its type or
Well, I should not say I use something called Book Rush. And Book Rush basically tells you what fonts are popular on what genre. And again, these are done by my cover artist. So she usually blocks my name. So my name is usually pretty consistent. And once it's in a given series, she'll stay with that given font.
Yeah.
But
my other question was so it looks like, of course, I can't see that far today, right? But it looks like your models all have the same face shape and stuff. So is that a considered choice as well, so that it's identified like your purple, that these are heart-shaped faces?
okay. In the beginning, Fiona I would fill out a questionnaire about the physical characteristics of my characters. She would provide me, what about this cover? I put this photo. It was only the person. And then she would do all the magic behind it. For the YA, I didn't know what to do. So she does a lot of YA books. First book that got the back to the audience. And then the second book, she's sideways. And then the third book, because she's aging over time, she's facing front on. But I didn't know what to do. Fiona figured that out. And because if you've got a cover artist, she is studying the market to see what in a given genre, what is selling. This is one of my latest books, Furious Cats. Amazon has something called their top 100. So I went to their top 100 under sci-fi romance, and I looked at the covers. So I tried to find a consistency, which was basically some kind of planet, some kind of ship, and some kind of person. And so we basically.
You found the elements.
I found the elements, and I've got 3 cats, so she got a little cat on there. But again, if you work with a cover artist who is who's keeping abreast, because if you go to Barnes and Noble now, as opposed to 5 years ago, covers have changed a lot. Maybe not necessarily in like historical romance. You still have the woman in her beautiful dress or the guy without a shirt. But I'm seeing more and more with like, cartoon characters, kind of. Or no people at all, just the word of the book, the author's name, and maybe some little graphic.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Someone else asked about sex scenes. Go ahead, you're on a roll. No. Someone else can ask that embarrassing question. Sex scenes, you have.
How many books have you wrote total?
probably around 50.
And do you write in series or each one just for that occasion or for that story?
If you're smart, you want to write a series because you want one book to bleed into another book. Some authors have 30, 40, 50 books in a series. You know, it gets to the point where when I start, when I started the Chameleon Soulmate, I knew there were going to be 5 books in the series. There's some authors like Janine Frost, she started knowing that she'd have 5 books, but the series was so popular that she spun off a sub-series, just called it different, same characters. Well, some burn, like Christine Fee had her Carpathians. I think she's 40 books into that.
Wow.
But I kind of lost interest after maybe the 12th or 15th. It's just really hard to keep a series going, especially if you like the characters. Because what I try to do is, once I introduce a character in a series, they're in there till the very end unless I kill them off. In the old days, if I had a bad day on the tennis court, look out, somebody's gonna die. Because I know from my own personal standpoint, within a series, Alex is in the Chameleon Soulmate, she's the anchor for all 5 books. So she's in all 5 books, but she's not the featured heroine in books 2 through 5. And how do you write sex scenes? You know, a lot depends on the heat you want in your book. There's sweet romance where everything is behind closed doors, which is really easy. You just have to work on the physical attraction without the touching and all this sort of stuff. If then you've got on the other end, you've got 50 Shades of Grey. And you've got something called erotica.
Yeah.
And you've got something called erotica romance. And somebody gave me this free book, and I'm like, oh, cool. And I started reading it. I'm like, oh my God. So I only use sex as a plot. And it's usually, maybe 10 pages. It's just because it's more of the storytelling than the physical. So it just depends on the amount of spice you have. So on mine, I'd say are probably 3 on a scale of, because it's not closed door, so I can't say that. But it's not heavily sexed. But still, some authors are just like, oh my God, I got embarrassed just reading it.
I just wanted to tell you, since you're a sci-fi person, down at the Decorative Arts Center in Lancaster, Ohio, until the end of this month, they have a star track of costumes. All 4 rooms full of. They have 3 original costumes because the Paramount sold a lot of the original costumes. But they have costumes from the other TV series and from the movies.
Oh,
We just
really
went,
cool.
yes, Wednesday. It's free.
Cool. Being a Trekkie,